Hello everyone, I'm Atira Minuddin, and on today's episode of Fireside Chat, we are joined with Puan Sri Norma Hashim, who is the author of 3 books on Palestinian affairs. She wrote the Prisoners Diaries, Dreaming of Freedom, and the new one is A Shared Struggle. But today, we are going to focus on the book, The Prisoner Diaries, a moving series of first-person commentaries on what Palestinian prisoners have been enduring for decades in dark recesses of Israel's unlawful and inhumane network of prisons. Thank you so much for joining us today, Puan Sri. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Alhamdulillah. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be given a chance to speak on this important issue.
Okay, Puan Sri, we want to know, how were you always at the forefront of Palestinian issues, and how did you get involved?
Actually, I didn't know anything about Palestine. I'm embarrassed to say that until 2008 and 9 when Israel launched attacks on Gaza. And it was like a very bad time for people in Gaza. And some of my friends decided to do some fundraising. And so they asked me to help with the fundraising because I'm an accountant. And that's how I got to know about Gaza and about Palestine. And the thing is, I had to learn fast because once we started doing projects in Gaza to rebuild, to give food aid, so I started speaking to people in Gaza every day to monitor the project. After about a couple of years, into 2012, I decided to start a library in Gaza, named after my father, the Hashim Sani Library. And from there, the people at the library, a professor and Dr. Mahmoud Al-Hutani, contacted me and said that they have many stories about Palestinian prisoners who were released in a prisoner exchange in 2011. So these are very harrowing, very touching, moving stories. And the thing is, I had not heard about Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails before. And I think at that time, 2012, probably most of the world had not even heard about this issue. And yet, every Palestinian family you meet has been affected by this. Since 1967, there have been about 700,000 Palestinians arrested and put in prison. And once you have been in prison, the reason why they are arrested and in prison sometimes it's just to intimidate them, to make them give up the resistance, for freedom. So I got involved in this issue. And once I saw the stories, I knew that they had not been published and people had not read them outside of Palestine. So I thought it would be a good idea to publish these stories.
An interesting fact about this book is that former Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad said this book was like no other book, and he even said, I quote, "difficult not to feel the pain that they suffer as one reel their writings." So, Puan Sri, how did you feel about Dr. Mahathir's acknowledgement, and how did it affect the reach of this book?
Well, when I got the stories, and I was thinking that I have to do something to make it interesting, or get some attention from the public. And then I knew Tun Mahathir was actually so famous worldwide for standing up for Palestine. He was not afraid to speak up against the Western powers. He would always speak truth to power. He was not afraid at all. So I went to see him at that time. He wasn't the Prime Minister. This was 2012, 2013. So I went to him to see him with a draft of the stories to let him read it. And he was really, I think he was also unaware of the issue of prisoners and probably very moved as well by the stories. The stories here are like, one story which actually came from a friend. I know the cousin of this prisoner, and it was a young man who had been put in prison, and one day after like 10 years, he was allowed to take a photo with his father. They actually allowed him to come out from that glass. Before that, every time you see your family, you have to be separated by a screen. When they allowed him to come out, he was so shocked to realize that he had grown taller than his father. And his father was so surprised and at the thought that he can finally touch his son, instead of being behind that. The father was almost fainted. These are things that are very touching, things we take for granted, that we can see our family all the time and all that. And, they are separated from their children. They never see their kids grow up. Another story in here was when one of the mothers told the wives told the husband that the children would cry because other kids have their fathers. But where's his father, because his father was in prison for 20 years.
and that you shared, it was the book got translated into several languages. So we want to know, how was the process of getting this book done? Were there any challenges or any setbacks that you have experienced?
Yes, because the stories came from Gaza by email, obviously, because Gaza is under siege by land, sea and air since 2006, when Hamas won the elections and Israel decided to impose a siege. And so people find it very hard to go in or out of Gaza. So the whole process of making this book had to be with my translator, Yusuf Al-Jamal. He was in Gaza. He translated the stories. Not many prisoners who have come out of prison will want to speak about their experience. A lot of them are very affected, they're very traumatized, and don't speak. So these are just a few of the prisoners, because in the prisoner exchange, 1,000 prisoners were released in exchange for one Israeli soldier. It's like the amazing thing that the Palestinians had one Israeli soldier for many years hidden in Gaza. Israel could not get them. In the end, they finally agreed to release 1,000 prisoners in exchange for that one soldier, to make it something that could be understood and could be felt by people outside of Palestine. People in Palestine are also very used to the issue of prisoners, but outside we don't understand what it's like to have your son arrested on the way to school, or to have your husband absent from your home for 20 years. We don't understand this, and the kids are arrested not for doing anything at all, but it's just a process of intimidation. They're also women, men. So for them, it's something that is so familiar to them, but not to us. So basically, I'm very glad after the launch of the book how it's traveled around the world. It's done well. In fact, even in South Africa, they took the book and they turned it into like an audiobook. Mm-hmm. It was read out on the radio over Ramadan. So I think a lot more people are aware already. Thousands have read the book by now.
And also, these diaries were published while the Palestinian prisoners were on hunger strike for freedom, and that was in 2013. And we are entering 2023. It's been 10 years. So have you seen any difference, and how did you feel about saying how it was 10 years ago and how is it today?
No, I'm afraid not. I feel that it's even worse now. More people are on hunger strike, and now Israel, they just ignore the prisoners until they really are on their deathbed. Really, yes, and their kidneys have been damaged and all sorts of things have happened to their body. And only at the stage where, because Israel does not want the prisoner to die in prison, it's very bad publicity. So at the stage where they feel that this prisoner is not going to last very long, then they will say, okay, we will give in, you can be freed. Because a lot of the hunger strikers, why they go on hunger strike? Because that's the only weapon they have. When you're in prison, and you are in prison for no reason at all, because of something called administrative detention. Israel arrests people who they feel are like people who can campaign or can speak out about their rights and all that. So those people who are vocal, they can get arrested and put into administrative detention, and they don't even get to court. So there's no case. But they put them in administrative detention for like 6 months to a year. It's very frustrating when you're in prison, as you can imagine, for not doing anything really, isn't it? So when they go on hunger strike to protest, so only after the stage where they're really bad, and then Israel will release them, but they can also arrest them again. There are many prisoners now on hunger strike. So basically what they say is it's the battle of the empty stomach for them, and it's because their body is the only weapon they have to fight.
That's sad.
Yes. But it's true, right? Because what else do they have? Yeah. You must remember, even like in Gaza, they have no army, they have no navy, they have nothing, they have no tanks and planes. So, but Israel can just launch military attacks on them, and they are like sitting ducks in a siege. This is why I continue, because I feel so much for them, people in Gaza, my friends in Gaza who I speak with every day. To know that they are in the situation which is ridiculous, which can be solved, but the Western powers have no will to do it, because they want to protect Israel first for their own reason.
And you wrote 3 books, but
Yes.
Among the 3 books that you have written, which of them perhaps left the biggest memory or a mark throughout the process?
I think they're all important, but maybe the first book, because it was the first time I encountered this. So it was a real learning process. And it involved getting into the Palestinians' lives, you know, in this way. You also, during the book, I made friends with many people, and I got to know a lot of people as well. So it was a very important book, and I think it set the path for my future endeavors in a way as well. Because if I hadn't done the prisoner books, it would have been just relief work, because, you know, I'm a treasurer with Viva Palestina Malaysia for the last 12, 13 years. So there are a lot of projects on relief in Gaza, food aid, water desalination plants, medicines, hospital projects, equipment and things like that. So a lot of my work is related to relief and aid, but it's not enough, you know, and I feel that really that Malaysians, although Malaysians, they know a lot about the atrocities happening, because there's a lot of coverage every time Israel attacks Gaza, but they don't know enough about the whole story. They don't know about the prisoners, and they're not aware of the discrimination, apartheid in Palestine, in the West Bank, in Jerusalem. So there are a lot of things that have to be informed to the public, to the world. So it's not enough to do relief work. We all have a responsibility to educate and inform.
And you said the book received a lot of good feedbacks as well in Malaysia and globally. But and you mentioned that there aren't enough awareness among Malaysians. But what can we do as Malaysians so that we are more informed and more aware, educated on these Palestinian issues?
Malaysians are, yes, they are generally very sympathetic. Every time there's an attack on Gaza, then we get a lot of funds donated to us. But, you know, we want to solve the problem. We don't want to fight a fire, right? So we want to solve the problem. And one way is to educate the young people especially. Somehow the governments, when they're run by the older people with their old thinking, it doesn't seem to change things. Of course, Tun Mahathir has been speaking out on Palestine for a long, long time. He's a real advocate. In fact, he's a hero to many Palestinians. But he's the only one. You know, he's the only one that speaks out. And now, of course, he's in retirement. So for us, I think we have to educate, especially the young people. It's important to reach them anywhere in the world. To change things in Palestine, I feel we really have to reach the public, the citizens in America, who gives the most funding to Israel. But in the meantime, for the Malaysians, it's very good to educate them and inform them. It's a challenge for us to do this, whether it's through films or through bazaars, seminars and things like that. But that's why I set up the Hashim Sani Center where we are now for Palestine Studies at University Malaya, because I feel we need to make the next step now, which is to educate, but not just on a scholarly level, but also in general awareness as well. So we have a lot of programs we're planning. We've just had our conference in December earlier this month. Yeah, seems like a long time ago. We had a conference where we invited speakers to speak on various topics related to Palestine, like water pollution in Gaza, and about apartheid in Israel against Palestinians, things like that. So we are on an ongoing awareness and knowledge program.
And interestingly, Puan Sri Norma Hashim will be collaborating with Sinar Daily, where she will be writing columns on our platform and also a podcast show. So could you tell us why have you decided to do this collaboration?
It's like the center that we have set up here with Professor Nazari and myself, that this is another way to increase awareness of the situation in Palestine, especially on the prisoner issue. I feel that the prisoner issue is like really the core of, you know, this Palestinian cause. It affects everybody in Palestine. And also to humanize the Palestinians. One of the reasons for the center also is to bring out the Palestinian narrative, we don't want to hear the voices of other people talking about Palestine. We need to hear what the Palestinians are saying as well. So by doing this prisoner story column in Sinar, I also hope these are the voices of the Palestinians, these are their stories. Everyone has a unique story, similar but not the same. Everyone has their own personal story, and I hope to highlight those stories which I feel can reflect the range of prisoners, children, women, children, men, fathers, sons, mothers. They're all in the books as well. So I hope that way that Malaysians and other people will feel connected to the Palestinians, hearing their personal stories in their own voices, which I do not want to alter because this is what comes from them. Yeah.
Okay, lastly, Puan Sri, we want to know, what was your hope then and what is your hope now, since you have experienced this for over how many years, listening to the stories, first-hand experience of these prisoners?
Yes, initially, in fact, because I was just involved at first with relief, and my hope then was like just to provide, make it easy for people in Gaza, to help build hospitals and schools and things like that. But my hope now is that we have to really see change in this world and to get freedom for Palestine, freedom for the Palestinians, freedom and justice, and to give them the right to return to their land. As you know, during the Nakba in 1948, and the film that came out is currently on Netflix, which I hope people will watch, what Nakba, which just shows a little portion of what happened in Palestine 1948.
Speaking of the movie Farha on Netflix about a Palestinian family facing violence in Palestine, received a huge feedback from the public, and the movie has eventually shaken Israel until they wanted to remove the movie from the platform. What was your take on this? What was your reaction when you saw this happen?
Well, of course, Israel does not want people to watch it because Israel has managed to survive all these years based on lies. It was established on the ethnic cleansing of Palestine and Palestinians, so they don't have a right to the land. So, and they always say that, oh, there was no people there, it was a land for the land where there was no people, but actually the Palestinians were there already. So these stories like this, which are the truth, even though Farah just covered a small portion of it, of the, I think it was 700,000 people had to leave Palestine. I think was 15,000 were actually massacred. What you see on Farah is just a small bit of what actually happened. Hundreds of Palestinian villages were razed, were destroyed. So it was like an erasure of the people and their land, So this is what Israel doesn't want you to see. So it's important to watch it and to know this. There's another film that came out also this year called Tantura, which was also another massacre. And in that film, I understand there was actually footage of video recording of a soldier who talked about how the Palestinians in 1948 during the Nakba were rounded up, put in cages, and they were machine gun dead. So men, women, and children, and some were like firebombed, burned alive. So these are terrible things that I'm glad, even though it's taken 70 over years, I'm glad it's finally coming out. The truth will finally be set free. I hope so.
What is your hope for Palestinians now?
I hope for the Palestinians to achieve freedom, justice, and the right of return. And I feel we have to push harder for that. But I feel there's hope because in America now the tide is changing. A lot of people are listening, and Netflix even showed Farha. Maybe this would not be possible a few years ago. So there's a lot more freedom. People are listening, and a lot of the young Jewish people now are questioning what is this right that they have. They call it a birthright. Why is it that Israel allows any Jew from anywhere around the world to come and become a citizen of Israel, and yet they don't allow Palestinians to be citizens of Israel, So that's apartheid, that's discrimination, and that's ethnic cleansing. So yes, we need to get it out. We need to work harder. I feel that we're getting there, inshallah, in another few years. But I can see even from the books and from the way that there's discourse on Facebook, in public, people are talking more about this. Yeah, whereas when I started out, it was something that, people didn't even discuss or think about. But now the issue of Palestine is still there in people's mind, but you need to push people to do something about it.
Thank you so much, Puan Sri Norma Hashim, for joining us today. It's been an honor to speak with you. And for those who tune in, if you want to catch this episode again and you want to watch our old episode of Fireside Chat and other exclusive interviews, make sure to log on to our platform, sinardaily.my, and also our YouTube channel, Sinar Daily MY, and also follow all of our social media platforms, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, to get your latest updates on the current affairs and all the news around the globe. I'm Atira Minuddin. Thank you so much for tuning in.